What's going on, everyone, and welcome into the fifth episode of Quick Nine presented by the Odds Breakers. On this week's episode, we have a very special guest, Geoff Ulrich. He's the writer for DraftKings Network and FantasyLife.com. You can find him on Twitter at @TheFantasyGrind. Geoff, thanks for joining me today, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. No, happy to come on. I mean, really, anytime I can talk about golf or golf betting, mainly golf betting and daily fantasy golf. I mean, I usually take the chance. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's get into things here. So I won't kind of ask too many personal questions here, but do you mind giving me a breakdown in kind of how you got into gambling and then more specifically golf betting?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be dead honest. I mean, I started when I was pretty young. I mean, I was like the classic kid who just would try and create parlays when I could. I mean, up in Canada where I live, we used to have something called Pro Line tickets, which is basically just a government run parlay system. So I was trying to get those cash when I was like 16. And then, I played a lot of online poker for a while. I got into that. I used to play 3,000 sit and goes a month.
Wow.
So I was, grinding that out for a bit, took a little break from that, and then got into daily fantasy sports and sports betting pretty good after that. So, it's been kind of a thing with gambling for me. It's sometimes been full-time. It's more casual and obviously into writing, but yeah, I've been at it for a while. So.
Yeah. So obviously your love for gambling kind of started earlier. And then how did you kind of parlay that, almost not a pun, but into kind of your career in sports writing?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just kind of happenstance how it happened. I mean, when I was getting into DFS more regularly, and it's back in the day, like 2014, maybe even earlier, that, it just was coming into existence. And I found out that this thing existed and it had a little bit of similarity to poker and obviously involved sports. And I'd already been I was already like a fantasy football degenerate. So very familiar with sports, with fantasy sports. So found that was there. And then, one of the guys that I'd kind of just communicated with in terms of just like these leagues that I was in, or, he was running like a site, was more like a fantasy site. And I just started doing a little bit of work for him, and it just kind of snowballed to the point where all of a sudden I was doing it was an actual side gig. And then it just became like this thing where I was like, this industry just exploded, and I was just kind of there at the right time. So, it was just, a lot of it was just happenstance. I do have a background in writing. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I have an English degree as well. So, I mean, I've always been someone who writes and I like writing. So that kind of probably is also contributed to it too. But a lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time, to be honest.
Yeah, no, writing background in writing certainly helps in this industry too.
It does.
Yeah. So obviously there's multiple ways to kind of attack golf betting. You have your kind of standard outrights and placements. You even have the new kind of jock market, which is almost like a stock market format for these golfers now. But you focused your attention on DFS. Kind of how did you narrow in that kind of niche in terms of with the multiple different options to bet on golf? How did you kind of narrow in on DFS?
I mean, when I started, I was playing a lot of DFS. I mean, I just gotten into it, and I was playing. I was mainly just football, playing a little bit of baseball as well. But then, I think it was the first year that DraftKings released daily fantasy golf contests, and I didn't play the first couple of weeks, and then I looked at it, and I'm like, this sets up exactly just like football. I mean, you have the multiple day break in between slates. You have time to research. And I mean, I just like that about football. I mean, there's just that nice build up. You get to sweat the games. You don't have to pay attention every night. That's the one thing. I mean, I've never been the guy who's just going to grind out an entire NBA season of DFS or something. I mean, I've tried. It's just not me. I don't have the attention span. I just do too many other things. But golf, it's so nice because I can do the early week research. I can set it, and I can bet as the event goes on now as well, right? So I love that. I just like the way it's set up. It puts a little bit of pressure on me from a nightly thing, standpoint as well. So I really got into that. Plus, I mean, I golfed a lot. I started golf when I was young. I've followed golf since I was like 10, the majors and stuff. I always watch them. So golf to me is like a great sport to watch. I mean, I know some people think it's like watching paint dry, but I like sports like that. I watch curling sometimes. I mean,
it's great.
I mean, it's an exciting sport. It's just like, at least I think it is. I mean, there's, guys making precision shots. I think it's just as much pressure as any sport. So to me, I just was very naturally kind of drawn to DFS golf for various reasons. Partly just loving the sport and watching it, but also just from how similar it was to football for me.
Yeah, agreed. I'm originally from Buffalo, so the Canadian aspect of my life, and especially the love for curling, has certainly played a role in there. So that's nice. But you started at the DraftKings Network, started your kind of weekly articles in the PGA, breaking down kind of the numbers from there. How did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, again, it was one of those things. I was working for a couple smaller sites, and DraftKings had been doing golf contests, and they were starting to get some content up on their site. Like, this is infancy, before they were a stock, before they were anything. Yeah. I mean, they obviously, like, we weren't even allowed to talk about sports betting back then, in terms of DFS, and they just needed a golf writer, and someone that I knew just was already working for them. And they're like, "Hey, Geoff plays golf, plays DFS golf all the time." Yeah. And he already writes. And it was just like, okay, yeah, like, you're hired. So it was basically, again, being in the industry in its infancy and just having that background in writing. I mean, again, it's a little bit of being in the right place at the right time, but obviously being part of a growing industry, that's just going to happen. I mean, there just wasn't very many people covering golf at that time. And the people who were covering it were doing like season-long stuff. There wasn't much betting content. There was probably like 2 people. Like, it feels like when, like, back in 2014, there's probably like 3 people writing consistent golf articles. Some of those people are still around too.
Yeah.
There just wasn't that much. So now there's just an avalanche of it, and most of it's really good and it's sharp. But yeah, back then there just wasn't that many people, and certainly not for DFS. So again, right place, right time, had the right background, and again, just have been doing that ever since.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I obviously wasn't in the industry in 2014, but I mean, even the past few years, it seems like there's just more and more golf content, and just trying to consume it all seems near impossible at this point. And it's most of it's really, really good too. So it's trying to pick and choose of which articles you want to read or podcasts you want to listen to each week. 3-parter here: your favorite major, your favorite tournament, could be a course too, outside of a major, and then course you've played.
So I wonder if anyone would ever answer PGA Championship for this. I'm not saying PGA Championship. I'm just for like a major. I mean, I don't know. I don't know maybe someone just likes the underdogs, right? But yeah, no, my favorite major has always been the US Open.
Yeah.
I just like the tougher play. I mean, I do like to watch the players suffer a little bit. I would still rank that number 1. I might say my love for the US Open has dwindled a little bit over the years. I just feel like the setups over the last 10 years, they've been a little up and down. I actually didn't mind it this year at LA Country Club. I thought it could have been a little tighter, like that, like Wyndham Clark hitting that drive like 50 yards off line and not getting punted. That actually irked me, especially because I had Rory, and I stupidly didn't bet Wyndham Clark. But that irked me a little bit. But other than that, I didn't mind the setup. It's still the US Open for me. I like it when the winning scores around par or -5. I don't mind watching the players suffer and try to have to make these impossible shots. I think it's good. I mean, I think that the players are the best players in the world, and they should be challenged by the course as well, just like regular players are challenged by a course. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I don't mind seeing the other part of it either, like players going nuts and guys shooting 61, but I still like the US Open. It's still my favorite. And as far as courses go, like with US Open, I mean, Pinehurst #2 is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Trying to think of a couple others. I don't mind Shinnecock, but yeah, Bethpage Black. I mean, the traditional US Open courses, I like seeing those.
Yep, for sure. And then favorite course you've played?
Favorite course I've played. I live in Alberta, so again, like I'm pretty lucky here. Like, there's a lot of good courses in the Okanagan and BC I've played as well. I would say probably Jasper Park Lodge, which is set in the Rockies. Yeah. It's not what you call an overly difficult course, but for an amateur, like I appreciate the difficult courses, but like I don't necessarily like them because they just you never have a personal best. They're insanely hard. And, you're like, well, it's a nice course. Too bad I can't like break 90 today. But Jasper Park Lodge is a little bit more straightforward. It's got some really good elevation on it. It's got great views, and it's gettable. Like, it's not overly difficult. So I would say Jasper Park Lodge, probably my favorite course. I haven't played it that many times. It's expensive, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But it's super nice. It's one of those things, if you ever come for a golf trip up here for some reason, or you're here in the summer, I mean, it's one of those courses you just play because, there's like elk and caribou walking through the course as you're playing and stuff. And it's just cool. So it's a great experience.
Yeah, no, it sounds unbelievable. In terms of your approach for the tournament, do you kind of already do you price guys out basically before kind of the opening numbers come out here? And then do you have any kind of specific website for stats that you use as well?
So yeah, for me, I mean, I don't price like the whole field or anything like that. Certainly I usually target certain players Beforehand. Yep. Try to think of, definitely like project out a certain odds for them, and then go from there. And then as the odds come out, I will adjust. Obviously, if the players I like are available, I just click them really quickly, and I don't have to do much else thinking in the morning. But obviously, if there's a discrepancy, then sometimes I'll have to go back and look and adjust my thinking. But that's kind of the first thing I do. Definitely just get the odds and go from there and just look for anything that sticks out really right away.
Yeah.
I definitely try not to get too euphoric right away and just like click too many names, because I feel like that just leads to regret. But at the same time, you do want to take advantage of, you see a name that's there. Generally the best idea is don't think too long about it. Just grab it, because especially as I've noticed, it's just over the last 5 years, I mean, golf odds have really changed. Whereas, I would say even 5 years ago, you probably had 24, 48 hours before odds maybe drifted a little bit. Today, you maybe have like a couple hours, maybe not even. Like as soon as the odds are released, people are, it's gotten a lot sharper, I would say, just in terms of the general market, sort of like grabbing those value opportunities, and then those just disappear really quickly. So you got to be quick in this day and age. You can't really hesitate, which is fine. You just got to be prepared for it. But yeah, I look at the odds, and then for stats, I rely on Fantasy National for all, for all my, strokes gain data and stuff like that. It's just super easy to use. I liked it. I've pretty much used it since it came out. I know there's other sites out there certainly that offer similar stuff. But Fantasy National is pretty much covers all my needs. So I don't really take it beyond that. And then for DFS, Stochastic, I really am a believer in their ownership stuff, and they put out a really good DFS product too. So I've used them for years. It just really helps ownership projections, if you have sharp enough ones, to really just dial down what's going on in a field and where the leverage can be potentially. So yeah, that's kind of the two main sites I rely on, like on a weekly basis.
Yeah. So in terms of kind of constructing your DFS lineup, do you have kind of a set process that you follow each week, or does it kind of vary based on, say, my projections were good this week, I kind of follow this way, or if maybe I was off a few $100, I kind of have to go a different path here?
I mean, for DFS, I'm kind of all over the place now. I mean, it's definitely, I look back and see if there's, mistakes with player or something like that. But no, I mean, I will definitely vary what I do week to week. I mean, some weeks I'll literally put together a single lineup and just play like limited amounts. And other weeks I'll play, like 5 to 10 and put them in a bunch of different stuff. But for me, yeah, it's kind of just, as long as there's nothing crazy that I think I missed, then, my process is pretty much the same.
Yeah. In terms of kind of playing one or multiple lineups, is that kind of multiple lineups are only for majors, or kind of how did you decide when you want to play a single lineup or multiple lineups?
I mean, for me, I mean, I've moved more over to the betting just in terms of like my overall like exposure every week. So for me, it's kind of just how I feel. Like if I don't have like a huge number of bets out, or maybe I don't have as much exposure to the outright market, I'll just fire more DFS lineups and try and get some upside from there. Or maybe it's just a week that I feel really good about it, and I feel like there's a good opportunity. So it's almost more like a weekly thing where, if I'm liking the way the lineups are going, and I think that there's a player I just want to get heavier exposure to, or a lineups construction that I really like, I'll just build out, like extra lineups. And again, like I'll generally dabble them and, try and get each one in like a 3 max or a single entry as well as a bigger entry. I think that for when you're entering, if you're not like obviously like building 100 lineups or using lineup constructors, or if you're hand building, one thing that you should do is make sure you're getting exposure to the highest upside. Like even if it's just like a $3 tournament, putting it in there, because if you hit, obviously you want to get paid out. So attacking the single entry 3 maxes are good too, but always trying to maybe just give yourself a chance at that big upside. I think that's something I always make sure to do, whether it's with a milli maker or just, like I said, even a lower buy-in. Something I'm usually trying to do each week when I'm entering.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Obviously, kind of one of the answers to this question that I'll ask in a second here has been unit allocation, of kind of a common mistake that rookie or kind of first-time golf bettors make. Do you have kind of a specific one off the top of your head that you kind of see as a common mistake kind of in the industry with first-time golf bettors?
I mean, it's funny. I mean, there's so much golf content out there now. Again, like, I mean, I can't say that I follow it all either. That it's really hard for me to say like where people are making mistakes or what people are doing. I do think it's interesting now, as like as people are getting sharper and taking good lines earlier. I think there's more of a focus on getting like value. Like, again, I think that as a new bettor, probably the biggest mistake people make is just, oh, I got to pick the right golfer. Like, I mean, to an extent, obviously, like we do have to pick the right golfer, but from a betting standpoint, like long term, I mean, it's really more of like a number picking thing. I mean, we're looking for, is this high rated player coming off like a couple bad tournaments? Is his number now, is it way too inflated? And is this other player, like, is his number way too big? And just trying to discern like where the good numbers lie. That should be your first and foremost thing. So I think probably what I see is just people just getting too, like we have to play this guy this week because I mean, he can't lose. Right. So, but like, or trying to be right when obviously we want to be right, but being right as a bettor, like most people just aren't that smart is what it comes down to. And I include myself in that. And when I say not that smart, they're just not that good at picking golfers, because picking golfers is really, really hard. It's just like picking stocks. So you should always be thinking about the numbers first and then the golfers. And if those align, great. But if they don't, then, chasing guys at shorter numbers can be a leak and stuff like that as well. So, again, like I think that overall golf betting has gotten way sharper over the last 5 years. There's a lot of good, content creators as well that give out pretty good advice. But there's still that tendency to people overbet, people put too many outrights on their cards. Like, I think if you're betting the outright market, you really want to get paid off when you hit. And again, if you're betting 10 guys and you're spreading out 10 units or something, I mean, it's just going to cut down to your overall downside. So, overall upside, I should say. So that's probably another thing, just, construction of cards that I see. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but again, it's hard to tell what people are doing all the time either. I mean, it just depends on how transparent people are being as well. So.
Yeah, agreed. It's always interesting too. You'll see it once in a while on Twitter of the Rory, Rahm, and Scheffler card all under 10-1, along with a few other golfers, and makes you just kind of think for a second.
It does. I mean, again, you don't see it that often anymore. And I think like most people, again, I think there's the education around gambling is getting better and stuff like that. But yeah, you still see it sometimes. And it's like, I mean, again, like, okay, you're going to hit Rahm at 800, but you've got these other two guys. Really, what is what is your real upside here? Right. So you always have to take that into account. I mean, we're playing an outright market. It's hugely variance filled. You want to get paid off when you hit. You don't want to be trying to necessarily, your goal isn't really to hit a guy every week. I mean, it would be nice, but your goal is like, to get paid off the best you can. And generally by doing that, if you're hitting too many guys at big odds, it's not going to work out that great when you finally do get on a hot streak. So it's a big balancing act every week. And obviously the fields differ every week too. Yeah,
agreed. Last question here, kind of any advice for kind of breaking into the golf industry here? Obviously, you're a major player in the golf market here. So I guess any advice to kind of newcomers in this space of trying to kind of start to writing or just trying to start to grow a personal brand here?
Yeah, no, I mean, like if you're, I feel like we're in like a golden age of like betting, like just in terms of just the industry, and you know, daily fantasy sports is still a part of that as well, obviously. And if you're trying to get into it, I mean, if you're breaking in, I think the one thing I would say is, you know, if you can be well-rounded, that's a good way to get you to break in. I mean, I broke in as a golf writer, but you know, now like actually a lot of my focus is in football. I mean, I obviously I'm always going to do some golf content, but you know, like I also had like a huge, I just love doing football content as well. And finally, like now that's kind of where my focus is, but it took me years to do it, years of just doing other sports as well in it. So being flexible is always good. Having a good writing background is good as well. So if you can always like practice, you know, work on your writing, people really appreciate good copy. They appreciate preciseness and stuff like that. And then I think just for growing your brand, like just in general, I mean, I'm like the wrong person to do that. I'm terrible at growing my brand. I don't do any self promotion. I should probably have like a bunch more Twitter followers, but I just, it's just kind of like the part of it. I don't want to say I don't like it, but I like to focus in on the gambling part of it. I like to just, you know, I like to gamble. I mean, that's the main reason I do it. I don't necessarily want like a huge social media thing either, but I think that for that, you know, being yourself is just really important. Like, don't be afraid to be wrong. You don't have to be egregious about it or be like, you know, an a-hole on Twitter. I think that's a horrible thing to do. Although some people do get followed because of that. I'm just not about that. But don't be afraid to put your opinion out either. I mean, who cares? Like if someone calls you an idiot, just be self-depreciating about it. Everyone on Twitter is wrong, even though at some point, even though some people's accounts do tend to come off as they're right all the time. Yeah. Everyone is wrong. Everyone is wrong more than they're right in gambling as well. It's important to know that. You're just trying to capitalize on those times that you're right, especially for golfing. I'm talking about. So yeah, it's just important to be yourself and just, you know, don't necessarily be afraid to put out takes, even though if you're going against other people or other people don't agree with them. You'll be wrong at some point. Like I mean, if it's not this week and next, so don't try and be perfect, be yourself. And obviously, you know, just be normal to other people, you know, be respectful as well. I think that's the best thing you can do. And people eventually notice that and they like it because those are the kind of people that eventually you want to hang out with. You don't want to hang out with the guy who's yelling on Twitter and, you know, trying to show off all the time. Those people suck. So just be yourself, you know, be good. And eventually it all comes back.
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. It's funny too, especially with golf too. Even if you have a great year and you hit one of 7 events, those other 6 you could be way wrong on, and you could have your 5 outrights miss the cut. So yeah, it's always interesting.
It's happened. I mean, I mean, I've had weeks where I've put together 4 or 5 outrights, and you know, like the best guys finish like T50 or something. Yeah. So it happens, man. I mean, it happens to everyone. The air balls will come, but certainly, you know, it's just about grinding through and trying to save yourself until you hit that good stretch with golf betting. I mean, we're betting outrights. We're betting 150 player fields. Sometimes you're going to go through tough stretches.
Yeah, completely agree here. All right, Geoff. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. You can find him on Twitter at The Fantasy Grind. Really appreciate you having on and taking your time to join us today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot.